Quick disclaimer, my heating's not working and it's been snowing outside for about 3 days, so as you can imagine, I can't feel my toes. I told you I was doing this thing regularly, it's a thing now. This week I'm currently on half term. Yeah, it's a thing. Haven't experienced since I was in school, but we're back. And I love it. So now that I've done half a term at school, I am officially 25% through my placement. And now I think I'm an expert in what I'm doing, clearly. Gosh, these glasses are actually disgusting. Pause. There we go. Considering right now I thought there'd be a lot of people who are currently applying for teacher training courses or going through interviews for them, I thought this video would be very helpful. Right now the world is in a completely different place than it would usually be on a normal application year, and so I imagine that a lot of the stuff is still going to be online, virtual interviews, etc, which is exactly what I experienced last year. So I thought this video would be quite useful and probably hasn't really been covered with many people because usually it's a completely different process. So if you're applying for teacher training this year, hopefully this is the video for you. So to start off, in case you didn't already know, I am currently studying my PGCE 1-year teacher training course at Durham University. I was at Durham for my undergrad, hence why I chose to come back. I think if it was a different year and, you know, the world was normal and you could actually explore the place that you were in, I might have chose to go somewhere different, but because of the situation, I thought I wasn't really going to get to meet many new people either way. I thought I'd just stick somewhere I knew and where I knew a lot of people there already. I also applied for my course really late in the year. Let's call it a panic masters. So when I applied, I only wrote down 2 unis, which was Durham, because that was where I was before, and Bath Spa, which is where I live at home. Usually if you apply in a normal year, you have to apply to 5 universities. If it wasn't as panicked as I was, I would definitely recommend putting a lot more thought into the places you're applying for and why you're applying for them, location-wise and course-wise. But obviously I knew the location of the 2 I was applying for, and I also knew they both had really good reps for their teaching courses. So, you know, it worked out okay. So in terms of the application process, I thought I'd pick out a few things that I think are important to note. Firstly, I applied through UCAS. I think that's the most common way to apply for these kind of things. I think something that can throw a lot of people off is the fact that you have to have 2 references, one academic and one personal/professional. So for academic, this is pretty much always got to be someone from your undergrad. I was okay because I used my dissertation supervisor, but I have heard stories about people who've applied for their PGCE like in their 30s and obviously haven't spoken to anyone on their course for years, so that can be a lot more difficult to obtain. The other one being personal or professional, it cannot be someone that's like your family or a friend. For me, I had the leader of the Brownie Pack that I volunteered on throughout the whole time I was at school, who I was still in contact with, so that was really useful. So someone from a volunteering group or a job you've worked out can be really good. Obviously it goes without saying that if that was in childcare, that's even better. In terms of a personal statement, I cannot remember exactly how long this had to be, but I think it was around about a page and a bit. My process, because I did my undergrad in education and psychology, was to start off with that personal statement in the archives and kind of pick out all the key points in there that I could use. Shut up. Obviously it ended up being nowhere near similar because, you know, 17-year-old me wasn't that great at writing. How did I get into uni in the first place? Who knows? I also have had a lot of experience working with childcare, but not necessarily in teaching, so my personal statement focused a lot on all the jobs that I've done, like working as a camp counsellor or as an activity leader, and kind of transferring those skills over into what would make a really good teacher. But even if you haven't had a lot of experience in childcare beforehand, it's so easy to have some transferable skills from other jobs or volunteering work you've done before. So for example, I even talked about like some extracurricular stuff I'd done at uni, like working with theatre societies, and with that I ended up talking about how that brought in leadership skills and organisation, which are all like really important things of being a teacher as well. So you also need to talk about why it is that you wanted to be a teacher. Obviously that's really important to include in a teacher training degree, but also try and avoid the tropes of, you know, I wanted to be a teacher since I was in the womb, because obviously it's not true and they've seen it a million times. I think I also wrote about the qualities I wanted to bring to the role of the teacher. Anyway, moving on from that. interviews. So I was lucky enough to, ooh, there's a piece of fluff in here. There we go, goodbye. I think I need a hoover. It's pretty bad in here. So I was lucky enough to get an interview at both Bath Bar and Durham, and they were both on Zoom, on Microsoft Teams, or the jazz. I thought I'd talk about both of them because they're both quite different, and obviously I don't know what other application processes are like, but other unis will probably use elements of what they did as well. So obviously usually for a PGCE interview you'd go into the university for the entire day. You'd get quite a lot of talks, you'd do a lot of group discussions, and then you'd have a one-on-one interview as well as that. But online, obviously, it's very, very different. So starting off with Bath Spa, we started with a 9 AM Zoom with kind of the group of us that were all having interviews that day. They did like a presentation on the course, basically just selling the course, and then we could ask any questions we wanted to at the end of it. They said it was so we could kind of like see other people that were applying, but if I'm honest, we didn't really get to talk. And the day, obviously, for the assessors was each one of us having an interview for about half an hour. So my interview ended up being at like 4 o'clock, so I had something at 9 and something at 4. And it was the biggest agony period ever. The thing I liked about the Bath Spa interview was there was absolutely 0 surprises. I think the reason I hate interviews, which is not rare, I think most people would say this, is the fear of not being able to answer a question that they've just said on the spot and not being able to think of an answer of what to say. But with Bath Bar, before the interview, they gave us this massive pack of all the things that they were going to ask us. So literally there were no fresh questions. So first they made us talk about our experience working with children, and it was basically just a time to kind of list off all the things you talked about in your personal statement and your CV. And then told to speak about a 5-minute teaching activity that we would have done. We were in the in-person, we would obviously carry out to the other people applying for the course, and they made it very clear that it should be teaching other adults. So I thought that was quite an interesting approach, because obviously we're all applying to teach children, primary children, so that's like below age 11, and in my opinion teaching adults is completely different. I would never do that, I could never do that, so it was an interesting choice. As I was also applying for the PGCE with maths specialism, I also had to base it around maths. That was kind of not a choice that I had. Others would be able to just do it on really random things like their favourite city or, you know, stuff like that. Not stuff that you teach on the national curriculum to children. Because mine had to be on maths, it was a bit more difficult, but I chose to do mine surrounding budgeting. Yeah. I spoke about like literally like making spreadsheets and like how it's a good idea to budget as a student. It was really nerdy, but yeah. I'm just thankful I didn't actually have to do it. I just had to talk about how I would have done it if I did. Who knows, they might change that for this year round, and I think other unis might have an approach where you do have to teach, but on Zoom, to the other people applying. Next up, we were given a lot of different teaching qualities, and we had to rank them from what we thought was the most important to the least important. These were a range of things. I think there was about 11. It was stuff like being creative, being organised, being up to date on educational research, things like that. And we basically just had to rank them all, and then during our interview had to explain why we ranked them. They were very explicit that there was no right or wrong answers. Did I just say answers? I've actually been in the north too long. This is mad. Sorry, gloss over that, but they made it clear that there was no right or wrong answers. What just happened? Sorry. So we could basically literally talk from the heart of what we thought. I remember right at the bottom I had like promoting British values, because I always think that one's really stupid. Like, what is British values? And sometimes I hate being British, so you know, not important to me. The last thing I had to do was bring in advance an article, an educational article of my choice, and kind of explain why you'd picked it and what it meant to you. So again, because I was doing maths, I thought, yeah, let's pick something mathematical, because I'm supposedly a maths whiz. So I managed to find an article about the language of maths and how sometimes it can be really difficult to learn math verbally because of the language is obviously looks different to the symbols that you use on the page. I chose this because this is something I struggled with when I was a kid, so I thought, this is gonna make them love me because I'll like relate it to myself. So if you have to choose an article, find something that really interests you, relates to you, means something personally. I think that can give you a lot of bonus points. So yeah, that was my Bath Spa interview. As I said, no surprise questions. It was wonderful. It was very nice. The woman I was talking to was really lovely. I ended up getting a 2-2 conditional offer for my degree. and yeah, I was really excited about it. Obviously I didn't end up going there because I'm at Durham, but it was a really good course. It looked really great, and I definitely was considering going there. It was really 50-50. So if you're looking at Bath Spa, I would recommend. And also Bath's amazing, so. Moving on to the next one, which was Durham. Now this is straight off the bat. I do like Durham. I have enjoyed my time here. Some people are twats, but overall I do really enjoy it. However, the admin department, they need help. I applied via UCAS to both unis at the end of May, I think it was, and UCAS said on their website that they should give me a final offer by mid-July, and I'm not joking, the day before the deadline I got an email saying like, you've got an interview. It was stressful as hell, and I genuinely think it's because they forgot to reply to my application. So yes, interesting. But once you pass the admin side, the course is really good, and the departments are amazing. So anyway, when interview day finally came, slightly different from Bath Spa, all the presentations that they would have done in person in the morning was pre-recorded, and you just had to watch them in your own time, any time before your interview day. Then had to do a short presentation on what our favourite subject was to teach. Obviously I didn't really get much choice in this matter, so I obviously chose maths because I think they'd be a bit like, huh, if I didn't, so naturally that's what I chose. But if you're on the normal primary course, then you could choose anything. I didn't do any slides or anything, I literally just spoke. It was kind of a speech for about 5 minutes on why I liked maths, basically. And that was it. The next thing we had to do was an artifact task. So we had to speak about an artifact that we would use in a lesson as a starter, and how we'd use that lesson, what the subject would be in, and how it would lead to an activity later in the lesson. I ended up choosing a suitcase, which now I look at it is really basic as hell, and they probably had it about 5 million times, but at the time I thought it was revolutionary. I used a suitcase and said I would put some artifacts in it that would be from an evacuee from World War II, and then the class would kind of look at it and think like, what kind of person owned this suitcase? And then that would lead on to a lesson of letter writing home as an evacuee. So yeah, it was yeah, oh, it's really basic now. I thought it was really great at the time. I think this can be quite a common task to do in an interview, so be prepared if this comes up, and have a little think of what you would use. So in Durham, those are the only 2 things that I was able to officially prepare for in the interview, and the rest of the interview just entailed kind of having a chat and kind of answering questions that they had. If I'm honest, I can't entirely remember what kind of questions these were, but we're thinking along the lines of, why do you want to be a teacher, basic, and like, what roles will you bring to this? I do also remember going into quite a interesting conversation about kind of the government's approach to the education system, where both sides of the camera we were kind of it's very clear that we weren't exactly pro government but we're also trying to be very polite and professional because it was an official interview, but we could both tell. One question I do remember them asking, which I thought was quite interesting: what's the most difficult part of being a teacher? And I think I said something about kind of working with parents, that some parents can kind of be quite hard to work with. Not all of them, obviously. If there's a challenging child who needs to work more at home, and sometimes their parents just don't do that, and then it can really like stunt their progress, or they can just kind of disregard you and what you're trying to do to help them, which can never be fun. So all that kind of jazz, but as usual, just do your research for interviews, and come across really passionate about what you're applying for, and usually that will make you look like a great candidate. So yeah, that was my Durham interview, and for that I ended up getting a 2-1 conditional offer. And as I ended up getting, thankfully, a 2-1 for my degree, as you already know, I ended up choosing Durham, and now I'm here and very happy. So I hope that was quite a helpful, informative video for y'all that are, oh, I hated that word, for you that are currently applying for PGCE courses. If you are, good luck on your application process, your interviews. I hope it goes really well. If you have any more questions, please let me know. All my social medias are below if you want to chat to me there. Happy to do it. I love making friends, especially virtually during a pandemic. Probably make more videos in due course about the actual course that I'm on and how it's gone. Obviously it's very different to what it usually is. I'm like way into my placement and I still haven't met like 2/3 of my class, which is obviously very weird, but you know, we'll just chat, we'll have chats and see how it goes. Thank you very much for watching. See you soon. Bye.